Good morning, and welcome to the DFS Army YouTube channel. I'm Razzle11, and you can find me on X at Razzle11Grinds. Going to take a look at the World Series and kind of break down the action. DraftKings does have a 7-game series slate. Some contests out there, a main $10 one. Nothing massive, but I thought it'd be something that we might want to touch on, dig into, just get ideas going this morning as we look to try to make some decisions. The World Series slate starts in just over 9 hours. As you can see, the $10 here is a little over 20% full, so a lot of room. And I was working on some lineups earlier this morning. Gave me an idea to try to record this video and kind of go over the things that we need to consider when looking at this series contest. As far as I know, DraftKings is the only one that's offering this, so obviously I will be focusing on DraftKings. I don't have a lot of historical data to go off of here from this contest. I played it in the past in some of the previous rounds in years past. I like the idea. It's just a matter of figuring out what the best route is. A 7-game, potentially 7-game. Like we're looking at 4 games and hoping for more. It is a captain style contest, so it's not just like a best ball kind of thing. So how are we going to attack this? The biggest thing that we ask are probably, what are we going to do about pitching? And that really is going to depend on what you feel the series does or how it goes. If you think one team wins 4-0, a quick sweep, I don't think any starting pitching is a must. There probably is a pretty dominant starting pitching performance in that stretch, probably 2 of them, if it goes 4-0. So maybe you can utilize one of them. You just can't really utilize 2 of them. Give you an idea here. Say the Dodgers were to win it in 4 games. You want to use Snell and say Yamamoto. Right, because we don't have Ohtani as an option as a pitcher. He's a hitter only. So you have the game 1 starter, game 2 starter. The reason I think you go that route, if that you're doing that, is just in case you're wrong and it does go 5 games. Snell is pitching game 5, Yamamoto game 6. So really, you kind of layer your rankings down that way, in my opinion. But say the Dodgers come out and just dominate with pitching the first 2 games, right? Snell, Yamamoto both put up 30s. We'll say, I find it tough that they both are going to put up 30s, but for this exercise, let's say 30. The big issue, obviously, Toronto doesn't strike out all that much, so, how do we want to use that? But now when you look at it, look at what your price point average salary remaining is, $7,200. Now, that has to include your captain spot. Say you think Freddie Freeman's the MVP of the World Series. Now look at what you're doing. You have $4,600 per player. You do have some bats that may or may not be on the roster that are 3K. Miles Straw at $3,400, definitely on the roster. Problem is he's only starting against Blake Snell. He might get an at bat here or there in the other games, but he's legitimately only for sure in the game when Blake Snell's on the mound. So do you want to rely on him when Snell's one of your pitchers? Probably not, because he's not getting at bats against Glasnow, not getting at bats against Ohtani in game 4. So then, what value do we get? Kiner Falefa might only be in there in game 1 against Snell now with Bichette being added to the roster. That just came out right before I started recording this. So now what do we do? Alex Call, Miguel Rojas, two guys that have faced lefties a lot. The problem is Toronto doesn't have left-handed starting pitching. They do have a number of lefties in the bullpen, or expected to be on the roster in the bullpen. So they might get at bats here and there, but none of that's guaranteed. Those are all the guys that are under, your average remaining salary here. So what do you need to do? Do you need to consider relievers? Well, the problem is they're only $4K. That's not creating all that much salary, right? Like, Louis Varland pitched in 10 of the 11 Toronto playoff games so far. 10 of 11. So for me, he is the number one relief pitcher to consider for all things this World Series. It's a dangerous spot because he's taking on a dangerous team, but he's the one that I'm putting my money on to be out there more than any other relief pitcher. But does he make sense in this context? Say the way we're building right now, we think it only goes 4, maybe 5 games. If it goes only 5 games and the Dodgers win it, Blake Snell's going to have a good shot at being the nut captain, to be honest. Unless, somebody like Freddie Freeman has a World Series like he did last year, right? So if it's 5 games, we'll give it a 5th game. Louis Varland probably pitches in 4. But is that going to be enough to be in the winning lineup? I don't know. As we know, he averages 3.2 fantasy points per appearance. If he makes 4 appearances, that's 12.8, 13 fantasy points. 13.2 over his last 3 appearances. His high, I guess he did have 10.5 in this spot here. But in the postseason, where he's been used so much, his high is 6.4. He's done it twice. So you would need him to appear 4 times and do 6.4 per to get to 26 fantasy points, which is still less than 2 solo home runs. So to get an idea of that, he's by far the best RP option for this type of thing. I just would probably rather use him in just the showdowns. But I think to be different, you have to include some of these guys just so you can go kind of stars and scrubs. I think it's really impossible to get 2 starting pitchers with this, unless you're looking at, say you still really love Freddie Freeman, but you're going to use him in utility. You're going to have to punt the captain spot, like a Pajes, Tommy Edman, Kiki Hernandez, Addison Barger, even though you're not going to get many at-bats in game 1 because it's taken on Snell. Alejandro Kirk, probably a popular-ish one. Even then, 5,600, what are you going to do? Jimenez, I think he's probably in there most days, so maybe, he's probably somebody that's going to be somewhat popular. But then Clement? Then you're relying on 2 bats from each team over 5 games. I don't think that puts you in a very good spot. So, the build with 2 starting pitching in it just doesn't make sense for a 7-game, the series contest. So, let me backtrack and get back to the relief pitchers, right? All right, so do we have to consider relief pitchers? If we do, how are we going to do it? Sasaki has been phenomenal in the postseason as the closer. Problem is they're not going to have him pitch 4 games, over 5 days to try and win the World Series in 4 games. As a starting pitcher, not used to it. This is the first time he had pitched back-to-back out of the bullpen. Just came last week, right? So, they're not going to have him throw 4 times in 5 days to try to seal it. So, what do we do? I do think, he has been used the most out of the bullpen in the postseason for the Dodgers. He has, he's 7 appearances so far. He's tied with Vesia and Trinan, but for 8 innings in those 7 appearances. like he has the most dominant stuff out of the bullpen, but the problem is, like I mentioned, I just don't think they're going to drain him that much. Avesia dealing with a personal issue, might not be on the roster at all, might not be on for first few games. They do have a leave list that would allow him to return like by game 3, I think, or potentially game 4. But there's also a chance due to this personal issue away from the team that he just might not be on the roster. That's a huge thing because he's made 7 appearances in the postseason so far. One of the most reliable guys. So what does that leave for the Dodgers? That leaves Blake Trinan, to be honest. He was pretty dominant last year in the postseason. Strikeouts have been there this year, but he hasn't been as dominant. But he has made 7 appearances out of the 10 games that the Dodgers have played in the postseason. He's only gone for 3 2/3 innings. He doesn't really have the same upside that Varland does so far. Plus, like we mentioned, Toronto just doesn't strike out. So can you really use the Dodgers bullpen arm? I don't think you can in this particular breakdown. On the Toronto side, Jeff Hoffman's the closer. So if you think, the Blue Jays win it in 4 or 5 games, maybe you consider Hoffman. Like, he has massive upside. Like, he showed it 2 games ago against Seattle. 2 innings, struck out 4. I mean, even the last one, 8 2/3 because he struck out the side. That's 20 fantasy points through 2 appearances. If you think that he makes 4 appearances, you have a shot at, I don't think he's going for 40, but 30 plus. He goes for 30 plus. That's like more than 2 solo home runs. That comes in handy. I just don't know if we can, rely on Toronto, I guess, winning the World Series, to be honest. But he's probably the one that makes the most sets outside of Louis Varland. Like, I just think Varland's going to see it so much. Seranthony Dominguez has seen it enough. Struggled a bit in the Seattle series. Was pretty decent against the Yankees. I just don't think he's worth it. I think I'd rather just use Seranthony Dominguez in some showdowns throughout the 7 games. So if we're eliminating most, if not all, relief pitchers, how are we going to do this? One starting pitcher, maybe, and it's got to be like Blake Snell or Savage if you think Toronto does it. But I feel like it's just got to be one of the first 2 game starters, especially because we don't get to use Ohtani as a pitcher, right? So then it's like Glasnow could, if you think it goes 7, then of course like Glasnow becomes an option because it would be him in Game 7 against Bieber. But like Bieber and Scherzer on the other side, I don't really think I want to use either of them against this potent Dodgers offense. So it becomes very offense heavy. Especially because like the Dodgers are potent and then Toronto just doesn't strike out that much, right? Like they have, 60 some strikeouts in the 11 postseason games so far. Bring it up on the other monitor here quick, but 64 strikeouts in 11 postseason games. Less than 6 strikeouts per game. That's ridiculously low, especially when the stakes are so high. That's, really tough to want to use a ton of Dodgers pitching. Now, obviously, you have to weight it against the fact that the Dodgers pitching is pretty elite. So who's going to win that battle? That's what you're trying to tell with your build. So similar to a regular showdown lineup, but even more so, you're trying to tell a long, drawn-out story with this series. I have yet to decide if I want to have Blake Snell in my main builds. I think I'm going to go mostly offense. I just think it's, plays similar to best ball, where we kind of devalue pitching a little bit more. The longer the series goes, I think the more the bats are important. So if you do think it's a 4-game sweep, or at most 5 games, then, you look at Blake Snell or Savage, depending on which side you think wins it. And then you just build around bats. You want home runs. You just want the guy to get a bunch of hits. You want to mix in a bunch of both. I think your captain spot's got to be a cheaper guy. Not a super cheap, but probably maybe a middling guy. I think that's probably going to give you your best chance at winning. A guy like Max Muncy, Will Smith, Alejandro Kirk, Dalton Varsho. But that'll do it, and I will be dropping a video breaking down tonight's Game 1 shortly. Best of luck.